This is Joseph Carpenter. Today is the 13th of June, 2025, and I am interviewing Roxann Fisk. This interview is taking place on the campus of Terrell State Hospital in Terrell, Texas. It is sponsored by the UTA Department of History and Geography and is part of the Terrell State Hospital Project. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed today.
Of course.
Can you share a little bit about your background before you came to work at the hospital?
So I started working at the hospital when I was 21, so there's not much to share other than I am a Texas girl, grew up in Texas, born and raised in Texas, and then we moved all over Texas. We moved to the Dallas area when I was 13, and then I started college when I was 8, graduated high school, started college when I was 18. My father died when I was 18, and I kind of lost my way a little bit. Still went to college for a couple of years, and then ended up quitting college the Thanksgiving of my senior year. So, and because I didn't know what to do, didn't know where I wanted to go, didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, and quit college, stayed at home, got pretty depressed, didn't know what to do with myself.
Right.
I had a friend that I went to church with that worked at Terrell State Hospital, and she said, you know, there's a job opening, I think you'd be great at it. And I'm like, I didn't know anything about Terrell State Hospital, so she interviewed me, and within 2 weeks, I was in new employee orientation, February 1 of 1999, and started at Terrell State Hospital. So that's my history. And
right.
Yeah. I mean,
what was your bachelor's degree in?
So I didn't get my bachelor's.
Oh, you didn't finish it?
I didn't get my first, I didn't get that bachelor's degree.
Okay.
I've subsequently gotten my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, but no, I quit school, Thanksgiving, of my senior year in college. So that was going to be a chemistry degree, and God had other plans for me. I had no idea that I was going to be a nurse, but God had other plans for me because He sent me to Terrell State Hospital, and then I became a nurse, and there we go.
So what was your first job here at Terrell State Hospital?
So Terry DeJarnett hired me. She was the assistant medical records director at the time, and she hired me. I was an admissions clerk, but I was medical records staff. So I was a medical records clerk that worked in admissions. I worked evening shift, and back then, the admissions department is completely changed now. But back then, the admissions department in the evening time, after 5 o'clock, it was just clerical staff, and I was one of the clerical staff that would admit patients in the evening time. So I was a clerk.
Did you have any experience in the mental health community prior to coming to work for Terrell?
Absolutely not in the mental health mental health field. I had precepted with I was going to be a doctor when I was going to college the first time. I was going to be a doctor, and I had worked with a physician, triaging patients, drawing blood, that kind of stuff. Followed him around a little bit at his clinic, but I did not have any exposure to mental health prior to coming to Terrell State Hospital. What
were your expectations when you first came here, and what were your impressions?
My expectations was it was just going to be a job. I was only going to be here for just a little bit, right, until I figured out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. My first impression, I didn't know. I knew Terrell State Hospital was a psych hospital because the person who hired me told me what it was about, but I didn't know really what to expect. I do remember being in new employee orientation and them telling us about, well, if you get bit by a patient, and I'm like, I remember that story so clearly, and I remember sitting up in NEO going, new employee orientation, going, people are going to bite me here? I do not know. I don't know if I'm cut out for this, right? So thankfully, knock on some wood, I've never been bit here. Here, yeah. I'm a mom of two, so I've been bit before. But I've never been bit here. So I remember going in NEO going, oh, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'm not sure. If people are going to be biting me, I'm not going to be able to tolerate that. But I expected my stay at Terrell State Hospital to be very short-lived and just to have a job to pay my bills and probably go back to college at some point and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I had no idea what I wanted to do, truly.
How did your friends and family react to your coming to work here?
So, they I don't think I don't think anybody knew what Terrell State Hospital was. They didn't really have,
Really?
They were just glad I got a job. They were excited for me. I remember that. They were excited that I had a job. And I mean, I remember very much liking my job as soon as I started, right? I enjoyed what I do. What I did in admissions, I met the patients. I talked to the patients directly. I worked with the doctors, back then, and I really enjoyed it. So, but my family in the community, there was not a negative connotation with Terrell State Hospital.
Were you living here in Terrell at the time?
We lived out at Quinlan or West Tawakoni, which is not very far, so people would know Terrell State Hospital. But nobody ever warned me you don't want to work there or anything like that.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
So describe a typical day in your initial job when you were working here.
So I worked 3 to 11. I think I worked 2 to 10 at one point, but my primary schedule was 3 to 11. So I'd get here at 2:45, get report from the staff that had been there all day, and then they went home. There was not a PNA assigned in the evening shift in admissions, and I would pick up where the evening shift left off, and there was usually patients in admissions being admitted at the time, so I would finish that process on getting those patients get admitted and then transferred to the units. I also did intake for other patients as they were coming in, or as law enforcement would bring them in. Because I worked evening shift, a lot of the patients that would come through were volunteers or emergencies or something that law enforcement brought in.
Right.
There was a time, and thankfully they stopped doing this, but we used to get on Thursdays was our Dallas County days, and it was the days that patients would come from Parkland and Timberlawn.
I see.
And it was large numbers of patients. They would be bringing in, 8 or 9 patients at a time. Well, they didn't get here until usually after 5 o'clock for some reason. The court would be in the afternoon, and then by the time that they would get all the paperwork processed, they would bring 8 and 9 patients at a time to be processed by me and sometimes another clerk and 1 or 2 doctors that were working in the evening time. So evenings was very busy back then. And then in the middle of all that, the patients that the law enforcement would be bringing in from local ERs or people they'd picked up on the side of the street or road or something that were referred here for, an evaluation for mental health care. So evenings was very, very busy.
Sounds like
very busy. And it was usually just me. I remember there used to be a rotation, like when we did have patients that would come in that I didn't feel like I could handle, or that I could be alone with. There was a rotation of the units they would come in and sit with the admissions staff.
I see.
So I would call the units and say, okay, you've got 3, there's 3 guys up here. I need a male staff up here. So they'd come up and they would sit with us while we processed all the paperwork. So I worked in admissions for about a year and a month. October of 2000, I applied for a job in the reimbursement department. Our electronic health record was coming. This is so when I first started in the admissions department, all of our records were in paper, right? I remember everything was paper. We did hand charting. The only thing that it wasn't electronic, but the doctors would dictate their psych evals, and then somebody would transcribe their psych evals and then would type them out, and then those would be, typewritten and put into the paper charts. So our electronic health records started coming about around that time, and so they created a couple of positions to help you transition us from paper to electronic. Right. So the billing department actually had a position open, and I applied for the billing department, the reimbursement department is what we call it. So I started there in October of 2000. It was part-time working on electronic health record billing stuff. We were transitioning, and the billing section came before our electronic health record came. So I transitioned, so part of the time I was still working in admissions, and then part of the time I was working in reimbursement, doing the electronic health record. And then I did a bridge for a little bit of, they wanted me more and more in reimbursement instead of in admissions, but I was still doing financial interviews and that kind of stuff for the patients as they came through. So I slowly transitioned away from admissions, more reimbursement. side of things. But I really enjoyed my time working with the patients, the doctors, and all of the things in admissions. You know, the admissions is the front door of the facility.
Right.
You get to see the sickest of the sick when they're first coming in and they're so very symptomatic and all of that thing, all of those things. And I even though I did not have a background in mental health, I was not formally educated in mental health at that time. But I learned if you treat our patients with dignity and respect and kindness, 99% of the time they're gonna respond positively to that kindness, despite their symptoms or psychiatric symptoms, you know, psychiatric illness, whatever is going on. If you're kind to them, I've always, with the exception of just a handful of patients that I served as their nurse, most of them they respond positively to that kindness. So I ended up transitioning fully into reimbursement. I went to day shift, and then from there I worked on, I billed all kinds of things. I did Medicare billing, I did Medicaid billing, private insurance billing, self-pays, that kind of stuff. So I really became an expert at billing and all that stuff. And then I should back up because I missed an important part of my history.
That's fine.
So in September of 2000 is when there was a new admissions director, and his name is Leslie Wilson, or was named Leslie Wilson, who I then Leslie and I started dating. I was never his staff, you know. I was moved into reimbursement, all that kind of stuff. But I started dating the admissions director, who was a nurse, and so that's actually meeting Leslie and getting to know Leslie. And then, of course, I was always working with the doctors in admissions, and, you know, several of them were like, you know, this is not our average clerk, right? She's bright, she's sharp, she's good with the patients. So I started getting lots of encouragement to go back to school. And there was always my plan to go back to school after I dropped out, before I started working at Terrell. So I fully transitioned into reimbursement, started all my billing experience, learned how to do that, and I decided to start taking evening classes at Trinity Valley Community College and started going to get my prereqs to go to nursing school. So I did that because I'd had a lot of it. I almost had a bachelor's degree. I didn't have to take prereqs long. So within a year, I had the rest of my prerequisites that I needed to get into nursing school. I started nursing school July of 2005. I was brand new mom. You know, Leslie and I had ended up having 2 children, and our last child was 2 months old when I started nursing school. So I started nursing school. Without Terrell State Hospital, I don't think that I would have been able to go to nursing school. I went through the education leave program that the facility offered at the time, and I was able to only work part-time. So I worked 20 hours a week and go to school part-time. Back then they didn't do tuition reimbursement, but I needed the time off, right? And I needed to be able to get my full paycheck because I was young, Les and I were young, and we were taking care of kids. And so I was able to, I only had to work 20 hours a week, and then I went to school 20 hours a week. And I got my full paycheck. So yeah, I did that for 2 years, went to nursing school. I graduated from Trinity Valley Community Colleges with my associate degree in nursing. And then I transitioned to a nursing position May of 2007. Wow. I remember bawling every day for the first month that I became a nurse because I was terrified, right? I went to a unit that they ended up assigning me to the forensic unit. It's called Unit 8 now, 8A and B. Back then we didn't have very many forensic patients. We only had, the forensic unit was the only unit that took care of forensic patients.
Please define forensic.
So forensic patients are they're patients with mental health challenges, but they come to us from jail. So because of a lot of times because of their symptoms or their illness, they have had some entanglement with the legal system. They've been arrested. And then because they were found incompetent to stand trial they couldn't go and defend themselves or get their charges adjudicated because their mental illness was preventing them from understanding their charges or working with their attorney or all that. So the forensic patients all would come to us from jail. We would restore their competency, their understanding of their charge, the legal system, and restore their competency, get their mental health symptoms under control, restore them to competency, and then we would return them back to jail so they could go back and stand trial and get their charges adjudicated.
That sounds like a really difficult job. So you said that you'd come in every day practically crying. Describe that a little bit more.
I started February of 99, fully expecting that my time at Terrell State Hospital was going to be short-lived, right?
Right.
I went to nursing school fully expecting that when I paid back my time, because I signed a contract because I did a time release with them, as soon as I paid back my time after nursing school, that I was going to leave, right? I fully expected that I was going to do this. I wanted to work on a medical unit. We did have a medical unit at the time. It's since closed down, but I wanted to maintain my medical skills because I wanted to be an ICU nurse. I wanted to go do that.
Right.
I couldn't work on the medical unit because Leslie supervised the medical unit. So that knocked me out of doing that because of the nepotism policy.
Sure.
So at this time, Leslie transitioned out of the admissions coordinator position, and he became a nurse administrator.
Oh.
And he was over half the units out here.
I see.
So I was pretty limited on what units that I could work on. I could work on child adolescent. I could work on the forensic unit. And then there was another unit called 5AMD that is different now. So I literally there was 4 units that I could work on. The only unit that had a vacancy was the forensic unit.
Wow.
Which the patients came from jail, right? And they were typically, in my mind, before I knew really what the forensic unit was about, these were the scarier of the patients because they came from jail. We sent them back to jail. You know, you've got that criminal component that I was unsure of, as a brand new nurse. So I cried for the first 30 days. But working on that unit was challenging, but it was absolutely one of my biggest blessings at Terrell State Hospital.
Is that right?
It is. I met Dr. Mitchell Dunn. Actually, I knew Dr. Dunn from working in admissions, and he and I were fairly close. But Dr. Dunn was our forensic. He's still a forensic director here at Terrell State Hospital.
Wow.
And I became the forensic nurse, and I started taking care of these patients, and I absolutely fell in love with that population. So despite, I didn't want to go to that unit, my rocky start, my crying for the first 30 days, for the first month, I was like, oh my, this is the place to be. These were the severely, I think I had seen patients in admissions, but I had never taken care of patients because I was clerical, right? But then I became a nurse. And I learned about mental health a little bit working here as a clerk because I was dealing with these patients. But then I learned more in nursing school. And I remember my nursing school instructor on my clinical rotation through Terrell State Hospital. She's like, she told me, I did not believe her at the time. She said, you have a mind for psychiatry. You need to do this. She said, 1, you're good with these patients, and 2, you just really understand it. I'm like, I don't want to be a psych nurse. I'm going to pay back my time, and I'm getting out of this place, right? I'm going somewhere else and going to make a lot of money. I was going to go to ICU and do all that stuff, right? I remember her telling me that, and then I went to the forensic unit, which absolutely was the best place for me. I had Dr. Dunn as my attending, who is a phenomenal psychiatrist who taught me all that I did not know about psychiatry, right? And the patients that you see that come from jail, there's a small population that are cute, and that may it might be their first first time struggling with mental illness, but for the most part, most of the people coming to us from jail that were having competency issues were people struggling with severe mental illness, right?
Yeah.
The medication-resistant mental illness, like the schizophrenia, that, you know, they've failed multiple polypharmacy stuff. They've failed different types of drugs, and they end up on, you know, 3 and 4 different meds to get them well. So the patients that I ended up taking care of were the most difficult. They weren't the scariest, though. So
that's
they
really
weren't.
interesting.
Yeah, they weren't the scariest. And again, going back to my time at admissions, you know, you treat the patient, you treat them with kindness and dignity and respect. Then, you know, it doesn't really. Some of the things that they were charged with was pretty rough, right? I've taken care of patients who have murdered people. I've taken care of patients who have, you know, assaulted, attacked, and all of these things. And but they ended up not being that scary, because most of the time what they did was related to their symptoms of their mental illness.
During this time, from the time that you started through the time that you're a nurse on the unit, what was the atmosphere? What was the culture like here at the hospital?
So the culture, when I first became a nurse, so over when I first started at Terrell State Hospital in '99, the culture of taking care of psych patients was very different than what it was when I became a nurse in '05. Well, there was a transformational process. When I started in '99, it was nothing for us to seclude patients. You know, we still have seclusion rooms to this day, but we don't use them, right? In '99, I think it was in 2000, when first part of 2000 is when we really started making the push across the state to eliminate seclusion, right? So I came into as a nurse in '07, is we were still secluding patients occasionally, and there was a huge emphasis on reducing restraints, personal restraints.
Yes.
So back in '99, there was a lot more seclusions, and a lot more personal restraints.
You think that when you began, it's probably a fairly common impression that people outside of the hospital have of the hospital.
Absolutely.
But you were transitioning to this kinder.
We were definitely so person-centered care really started coming about in the early 2000s, where we were eliminating seclusion, moving away from all of the rights restrictions that were very, very common in the early mental health days, right? So I remember still secluding patients at the very beginning of my nursing career, but it was not very common. We still had. We still responded, aggressively with aggressive events, right?
Yes.
With aggressive events. Person-centered care really took off, and, we started putting the person first, and we started learning, that prevention is, recognition and prevention was key to taking care of patients with mental health issues. And we started learning that let's get ahead of what's coming. And medications got better. Medications got better in the late 90s, early 2000s. So a lot of new atypicals came out, and a lot of the meds that patients sometimes often did not want to take because there's lots of side effects associated with them. But we had a lot of atypicals that were coming out early, and we started using them, Seroquel and Zyprexa. That they'd been used in the late 90s, early 2000, but by the time I came along in '07, those were very common meds, and they really helped our patients get their symptoms under control.
You seem to have adopted this patient-centered care philosophy before the system did. So because you were talking about being kind to the patients, and that they would respond mostly in kind. What brought that transition about for the hospital system?
So there was a RAJ lawsuit. It's what it's called. It's a patient that was a Terrell State Hospital patient, and There are books written by him, or not by him, about him in this lawsuit. And actually, it was multi-state hospitals got involved in it because we secluded this patient and we took away everything, and we secluded him because he was highly aggressive and we didn't know how to deal with him. Right. We came out of the RAJ lawsuit in the 90s, and that lawsuit is what really pushed us more towards person-centered care. Where we offer programming and all of the adjunctive therapies and all of the other things, not just, medication. Medication is not the only thing that we use. It's not the only tool in our toolbox to help patients with mental illness.
And that was a Terrell State Hospital patient?
Yeah, he started here at Terrell State Hospital. We ended up, we sent him to, I think we sent him to ASH.
Austin State.
Yeah, we sent him to Austin State Hospital, and I'm not the RAJ expert. I wish that one of my mentors, Vertus Story, who was the longtime QM director here at Terrell State Hospital, could be interviewed, but actually he died a few months ago. He would have been a phenomenal historian for you to tell you about RAJ and the transition of care that really from what we were to what we are now.
Seems like a very important time for the hospital.
The RAJ lawsuit, and I can send you some articles on that. I can find some and send them to you.
Please.
But RAJ and that lawsuit, and then what happened subsequently, really changed the way that Terrell State Hospital took care of patients. Not just Terrell State Hospital; it ended up affecting all the state hospitals.
Right.
So
what patient or situation during this early time in your career, what sticks out to you? Is there a situation that you remember specifically? Obviously, we're not naming any names here, but just a circumstance that really had an impact on you.
There are so many. There really are so many. I remember that very early on in my nursing career, even before I was out of my precepting time, as a brand new nurse, I was precepted for 6 months, and I had an excellent nurse mentor, and of course I worked with Dr. Dunn, and I got the most difficult patients. Those were the people that it seemed like I could forge a connection with, and then help them in their recovery. So one of my absolute favorite patients of all time, I started nursing here in 2007, and he was admitted in 2007. I had been here maybe 5 or 6 months, or I'd been on the unit about 5 or 6 months before he came in. He just discharged from the facility. We just sent him to a nursing home. He was, I've got one other patient that I took care of that's been here consistently, but he was my longest patient. And so he admitted in 2007, and he just discharged 2 weeks ago. And he went to a nursing home.
That's pretty unusual.
It is very unusual. Our patients don't typically stay here that long.
Right.
The forensic patients, the patients with criminal charges, oftentimes stay longer. This gentleman had attacked his father, hurt his father, and the court. So he had and it was a pretty significant injury. So it was a first-degree felony, and the judge for the longest time would not drop his charges. And to be honest with you, because I'm not involved in his care anymore, I don't know if they ended up dropping his charges. His father died several years back. So I don't know if they ended up dropping his charges, or if the nursing home, he had declined so much. He was in a wheelchair, had dementia, and all of that. So I don't know if they dropped his charges, or if the nursing home just accepted him with his criminal charges. A lot of times the nursing home will not accept them. So the judge wouldn't drop the charges because of the nature of the offense, and he just discharged. So 2007 to 2025. So that person, I won't say his name, but everybody at this facility knows he was my guy, right? And I would still go to the geriatric unit to go check on him. And most of the time he wouldn't remember me.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You would see that sometimes he would recognize me, but then he wouldn't remember me. The last time I actually saw him, he was having a good day and he recognized me. And he always called me ma'am. I'm thirsty, ma'am. I'm like, oh, well, let me go get you some water. So I went and got him some water. And I stood there. So we had a good little moment. I was super sad because he discharged 2 weeks ago. And he was supposed to discharge, I think, the day after I was going to see him. Anyway, in my new job, I travel a lot.
Yes.
So I missed going to see him.
Oh.
So it was really the saddest thing ever that I didn't go say goodbye. But I'm like, you know what? The last time I saw him, he recognized me, and we had a good moment. He might not have recognized me that last time.
That's right.
So I remember getting the most difficult patients, the patients that we never thought would get better. Right. That would be the most aggressive patients. I remember a little guy that he had schizophrenia that was so profoundly ill, and he came to us starving. And he came from, I don't know why we were getting patients from Bexar County Jail, but he came from Bexar County Jail.
Wow. Yeah.
He came from the San Antonio area, and he was very skinny, and he was hungry all the time, and he needed a lot of medicine, right? Because we still have to get the patients to consent for their medications, and he did not have the capacity to consent. So, but he was incredibly aggressive, and I remember we had to give him just PRN meds, which is as needed meds for behavioral emergencies over and over again. That's the only time we can give medicine against a patient's will. Can
you get a court order?
You can get a court order, but he was so early in his admission that we had not gotten a court order. We ended up getting a court order on him, but he was so new to us that, you know, he's having a behavioral event, and the only way that I could get meds on him, I don't like, you know, giving patients shots that's against their will. That's just, I mean, how untherapeutic is that? You know, I'm trying to establish a therapeutic relationship with somebody, and then I've got to hold you down and put an injection in your butt, right? Nobody wants that, and it's not therapeutic. It's not therapeutic for me. It's not therapeutic for them. Yeah. So I quickly realized on this particular guy that he was hungry. So we thankfully at the time we had dissolvable medication by then, right? I don't know how nurses did it back in the day without some of these tools that we have today, but I had dissolvable Zyprexa and some Ativan pills, and I would come at him with some peanut butter and this medicine in this cup, and that's how I would get him to take his meds until we could get those court-ordered meds in him. So, and I was the only one for this person that could get him to get meds. We ended up, the other shifts, I felt so terrible, but the other shifts would have to medicate him, but it was, in a personal restraint and shots. So, I think the greatest thing, I've had lots of successes as a nurse here. I've had patients who we never thought were going to regain competency and we were going to be able to discharge and send home. But, working with them, working with the treatment team, working closely with the patient, we would be able to get them competent and get them out of here so they can go back and get on with their life after they get their charges, resolved.
Right.
But I think the biggest success for me as a nurse is years later when I haven't taken care, because I actually left the floor in 2015. Okay. I moved to quality management in 2015. But years later, the patients they'll come back into the hospital for a variety of reasons. But I'll be walking through the hallway, or when I was doing rounds on the units, they would recognize me, right? Mm-hmm. And Miss Roxann. And I think that truly has told me that I've had a successful career.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's has to
years
be
later,
yeah.
I have patients who I have not taken care of in 10 years, and they recognize me. And that just tells me that, I was kind.
Yes.
I helped them on their way, to their recovery. And I was a good nurse because they remember me.
That's very good.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
Talk about how you dealt with your own stress, your own emotional and psychological feelings about what you're doing. It's a very difficult job.
Yeah. So first, being a psych nurse is difficult, right? Mm-hmm. This population is pretty difficult. Oftentimes they cannot tell you what's wrong. You have to be very good. You have to be a super sleuth, really. You have to be able to establish a rapport with your patients who are very psychotic at the time, and then figure out that, okay, this is how they normally act, but then they're doing something different today. What does that mean? So you have to establish a relationship. You got to figure out, okay, this is baseline for this patient, and then you got to be able to figure out, something's wrong, something's different. And so it's hard being a psych nurse. It's especially hard being a psych nurse who's taking care of patients who've committed terrible crimes, right? You have to be aware of your personal biases, right?
Right, yes.
You have to be aware of your personal biases and know that they are here for a reason. Their crimes or charges didn't impact did not and should not impact the care that I provide or the feelings that I had about them. So I was able to disconnect any personal feelings that I had about their crimes or what the events that they did. And I think that's something that's very important as a psych nurse is what happened yesterday, and then every day is a new day, right? I can't, if I had a patient yelling and screaming at me yesterday, we're going to reset and today's going to be a better day and not hold that against them. And I think we've all done things that we regret, and I give everybody grace. So I gave my patients a lot of grace that we had a rough day yesterday, but today's going to be better. And then thankfully, I was surrounded by therapists and psychiatrists and all these other people that were making sure that we made sure we had a team. We had a great team on the unit. That made sure that our mental health was good, right? Sure. If we had a tough patient, if we had a tough situation, then we'd get the team together and let's talk this out, right? I can tell that this patient is causing lots of feelings. They may be divisive, right? Right. The staff may be struggling on, dealing with whatever's happening on the unit. So we had a lot of support on the unit. Again, I work at a psych hospital, so I'm surrounded by therapists and psychiatrists and the experts on dealing with, taking mental health care and making sure that, we're taking care of ourselves. We're going home and resting and washing off every day. And that's really what you have to do with psych is, you gotta let all that stuff go.
I think it's a good analogy. Yeah. Washing off. It's kind of like just,
you got to wash it off.
Yeah, clearing your mind.
And I do some mental imagery, and I still do this. I don't take care of patients anymore, but I've started doing. I did this a long time ago, but dropping things off. I'm carrying a heavy bag, right? I'm carrying a heavy bag of whatever I'm dealing with, the stress and all the things of being a mom, a nurse, and all of the things that is in life right now. Carrying this really heavy bag and then dropping it off on the side of the road. Yeah. And I still do that. That I'm dropping that off at the side of the road because I am not carrying that baggage with me anymore. So just washing that off and then moving forward every day, and every day was a new day. I think I really enjoyed that about psych because every day was a new day. It wasn't the same old stuff. So about a year and a couple of months into, and everybody that I worked with on the forensic unit knew I was going to leave because I'd been saying this, right? I was going to pay back my time and I was going to go be an ICU nurse. I had Presby Dallas had already offered me an internship when I decided to go because I was still going to be a new nurse because I'm not taking care of ICU patients here. Right. But about a year and 3 or 4 months into me becoming a nurse, I remember my mentor that I still worked with, my nurse mentor, going, "Hey, when's your time up? When's your payback up?" And I'm like, "Oh, I paid back my time like 2 months ago, right?" Yeah, wow. And he's like, "Are you still going to leave?" I said, "Absolutely not. I just had fallen in love with psych nursing, right? And I was good at it. I took care of the people that nobody else wanted to take care of. Right. And I loved the team that I worked with. Even though I had a rough start on the forensic unit, I didn't want to go. It was absolutely the best time of my career was working with that team. working with those patients, working with, Dr. Dunn and the great social workers and psychologists that I worked with every day.
So look at your career from the beginning until we get to the time that you're leaving the hospital. Mm-hmm. How did your view of mental health care in general and the care that was offered in the hospital, how did that change over that period of time?
So the longer that I became a nurse, the longer that I was a nurse, I realized how misunderstood patients with mental health symptoms or issues were. And I wanted to become the best at what I did. So I worked hard. I worked hard with Dr. Dunn. If something was going on, I didn't understand why he was going down this avenue of treatment, why he switched to this medicine, why he changed the diagnosis from this to this. I was always very curious about that, and I wanted to be the best at what I did. Before I left direct care, I ended up going back to school through the education leave program again. And this time I only got 1 day off a week, but they did give me some tuition reimbursement. But I was able to get my bachelor's degree in nursing.
Right.
Very quickly after getting my bachelor's degree, like I told you, I wanted to be the best at what I could. I wanted to take the very best care of the patients that I was serving. That I could. So I went and I became psych certified. So I am a certified psychiatric mental health board certified nurse.
Wow.
So and if you don't know much about certified nurses, you can get a certification in all kinds of areas, right? Neonate, ICU, vascular stuff. Well, psychiatric mental health also has a board certification. So I went and became a board certified psych nurse. I'm very proud of that certification.
Yes,
I think I'm more proud of that certification than I am my master's degree, to be honest with you, because it really, and there's not a lot of us across the state hospital section of psychiatric mental health nurses, but I think it symbolizes my passion for psychiatric mental health care. And my devotion to absolutely provide the best care to our patients. And that was my whole goal. As soon as I started taking care of patients, was to become the best at serving these people. The patients that you see at our state hospitals are absolutely the underserved. They're they're the castaways of our society. They're the people that smell funny, act funny, do weird things that nobody wants, because it makes us uncomfortable. Right. So we don't want to talk about them, right? Which you can tell. Texas is last in mental health spending, right? In the nation. We have done better this last couple of years, because of the gun violence that they've associated with mental health issues. So Texas is trying to make up for lost time, but we have not devoted enough resources to psychiatric mental health care. So.
When did you finish your bachelor's degree?
I finished my bachelor's degree in 2014. And
you finished your master's degree when?
I finished my master's. I actually just got my master's, and I finished it in 2022.
You transitioned from the floor to quality management. When did you transition out of quality management?
I was in the quality management department for, I think, a total of 3.5, 4 years. I was the clinical information coordinator for about 2 years, and then I became the quality management director for 3 years. So I guess that was that. Yeah, 2022, and this is a true story. We had a long spell of not having a stable chief nurse executive, and the facility was struggling. We were in the middle of the pandemic. And all the challenges that the pandemic brought. So even though I was still supporting the facility in my director of quality management role, the facility was really struggling because we didn't have a consistent chief nurse executive. We had 2 interims, we'd had 2 CNEs that did not last long, and current hospital leadership, Dr. Mark Messer, Dr. Chad Levada, and Reagan Teal literally guilted me into becoming the chief nurse executive because I had no desire to be the chief nurse executive, right? So I became the chief nurse executive in 2022, and I did that, and then in February 2024, actually it was January 2024, I transitioned out of Terrell State Hospital to central office, and now I'm the chief of nursing for
the
state
entire
hospital,
system.
for the entire state hospitals. Yeah.
Wow, that's a big job.
It is a big job.
Talk about that a little bit.
So it is a big job. So being chief of nursing is a big job, but going back to when I started in admissions, February of 1999, I just wanted to take the absolute best care that I could of the people that I was serving. Terrell State Hospital was very good to me. It helped me get my associate's degree in nursing, my bachelor's degree in nursing, and my master's degree of nursing. Mm-hmm. And then I was able to get psych certified, right, as a board certified psych nurse. Terrell State Hospital afforded me to do that. Mm-hmm. And an opportunity came up for the chief of nursing position. And what a better way to take better care of the people that we serve, but then go into a statewide role where my beliefs, my visions, my values for taking care of patients is now represented. My job is not without its challenges. That's why we're at Terrell State Hospital today, because I am central office staff, but I still report to Terrell State Hospital. It's my home base. Okay. Thankfully, facility leadership still lets me have an office at Terrell State Hospital. So on most days, I report here if I'm not traveling. My travel schedule is pretty heavy at times. I try to visit all the facilities that I possibly can. I was at Kerrville last week. I was at Big Spring the week before. I was at Waco last week. I forgot about Waco. So I'm still doing what I did back in February of 1999, which is just trying to take the best care of the people that we serve. Mm-hmm. So it's a big job.
Yes.
Lots of challenges. The biggest challenge, I think, was probably leaving the comfort and the security that Terrell State Hospital offered me. Mm-hmm. I almost did not take the job because I'd spent 25 years at Terrell. I could not see myself. I was running from Terrell, right? I was not going to stay at Terrell State Hospital. Right. Throughout multiple times in my career, I said, I'm leaving. I'm not staying. And then when it gets to the point where, I needed to grow, I needed to, be a bigger change agent than what I could at Terrell. It was scary to even think of leaving, but thankfully, our associate commissioner, Christy Carr, she knew me when I was the CNE here at Terrell. She made it work for me that, because I had this very honest conversation with her. It's like, I don't think that I can be successful. If you pull me to Austin, I don't think I could be successful because I still got to be able to come back home to Terrell to see why my job matters, right? I've got to be able to see why my job matters. I've got to be connected to patients. I've got to be connected to staff. And thankfully, my connection with Terrell still allows me to do that because they didn't take my keys away from me. They didn't take my badge away from me. I still get to go if I wanted to go see my patient from the forensic unit who was on the geriatric unit just until a couple weeks ago. I could go visit him. Right. And I get to go see the patients. I still get to interact with them if I want to. So
talk about the present challenges of your job. What are you seeing more broadly in the mental health community?
I think more broadly, I think we have less challenges now than we used to. The legislature is giving us more money for mental health funding. It's an exciting time right now in the state of Texas for mental health care. We are building brand new facilities. We're building 3 brand new facilities: Lubbock, the Panhandle, and Dallas State Hospital. And I'm able to be part of before these facilities are even built on designing these facilities. Like, we want to take care of this population here. We want to do this here. So we're building new facilities. We're also building replacement hospitals. Terrell State Hospital is getting a new hospital. Yes. You can see all the construction over there. I've been part of that because when we started the planning, when we got the money for the planning phase of that, I was the chief nurse executive at Terrell State Hospital. So Terrell State Hospital, the new Terrell State Hospital, will very much have my vision of what the patient care units looked like. I designed the nurses station for Terrell State Hospital's new hospital, and then all of our nurses stations going forward.
Wow.
Yeah, I designed that. Me and a design team guy designed it. We looked at the new hospitals that are already built, Rusk, Austin State Hospital, and then San Antonio State Hospital. Lines of sights are wrong, right? Different things are wrong. I got to visit those facilities before we started the design phase here at Terrell, and I'm like, okay, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Thankfully, I mean, I had the benefit of looking at their mistakes before we get to even start our facility. So we designed a nurses station that is now getting implemented at the new builds for the facilities that have that at all the new facilities that are coming. Wichita Falls getting a new facility. Their nurses station is going to look like the nurses station that I designed.
So you're saying that this kid from Quinlan was able to do all that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I that's where I worked Quinlan. I'm not from Quinlan. I told you I was from all of Texas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was from all of Texas, but yeah, it's pretty phenomenal that
it's amazing.
A kid that did not know what she was going to do
exactly
was able to come to Terrell and really just bloom and blossom. And I mean, I didn't do it by myself, right? I had amazing mentors along the way. The facility thankfully provided me with the avenues to work hard and be repaid in kind with all my hard work. With I'm educated now. I now get to have a input on the way that all of our state hospitals take care of our patients.
Yes.
It's pretty phenomenal when you think about it. I'm completely in awe at where the 21-year-old was when I started, and I'm not quite 48. My 48th birthday is next week, but all that I've been able to accomplish because of Terrell State Hospital. So we've got the new hospitals coming that I'm part of. Remember, I was part of the new electronic health record when we first rolled out our electronic health record back in the early 2000s.
Right.
I'm now getting to build the new electronic health record that we're going to have as well. I was on the procurement team, and I'm also on the design team. So, people talk about legacy, right? Before I even knew what legacy really meant, but my legacy truly is, improving mental health care at the state hospitals. I started it here at Terrell State Hospital, and all the things that I'm getting to do now because I work for central office is just phenomenal.
It's almost as if it was part of a plan.
I think it was part of a plan. It absolutely was part of a plan. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a Christian, and it absolutely was part of a plan. After when my dad died when I was 18, I had no idea what I was going to do. I went through some tough times trying to find myself, trying to find my path. And who knew that my friend from church who hired me when I was 21 years old would have impacted such a change, right? And such a change in my own life. But I've done some good stuff. Good stuff while I was here. I've impacted patients, right?
Yes.
I'm no longer the chief nurse executive at Terrell State Hospital, but my mission and my vision and my beliefs on how we take care of patients is still present here at Terrell State Hospital and is being echoed at all the state hospitals because I'm not going to tolerate anything less.
Right. So we talked a little bit before we started the interview about the history of Terrell State Hospital because we're building a new hospital here on the campus. And so we're now discovering some of the historical things, some of the artifacts and other information. And you had specifically mentioned that there's pretty good history of the superintendents of the hospital as it's gone forward through time. What about the nurse directors or the nurse executives?
So I've got Benny Britton's book here. in my hand. Actually, here, there you go. I've got Benny Britton's book in my hand. And he does a great job telling the history of Terrell State Hospital, right? From 1885, when the facility was built and started, until the time that he stopped writing his book. I'm not sure what year, 2008, which I started in 99. So,
Right.
And I remember I was having to write an article on Marie Ballard. She was a longtime chief nurse executive here for the facility. And there was some kind of tribute or something that I was going to write a quick article on. And I went to Benny's book to try to find out what years Miss Ballard served, right? We have a conference room named after her here at Terrell State Hospital. She was a phenomenal nurse, and she had a long history at Terrell. Even after she retired, she was a volunteer. I remember that she would come out every year for the Nurse of the Year Award, which is called the it's still to this day called the Marie Ballard Award.
Wow.
Which I was honored with receiving the Marie Ballard Award when I was on the forensic unit.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. I went and pulled Benny's book out thinking that I would be able to get the dates for when Marie Ballard was the CNE, and it's not in the book. So that scared me, because Terrell State Hospital has history, and we have books, and we've got lots of our history, but I'm afraid that the nursing history of Terrell State Hospital may be lost. So I went back and I dug up what I could. I've got Marie Ballard through current chief nurse executive, but I haven't been able to find who was the CNE before, the chief nurse executive prior to Marie Ballard. So
wonder if those are in all of those ledgers that we've still not
I'm hoping that history is there, because I promise you, if there are patients, there are nurses, right? So, and we have had patients since 1885, so I promise you we've had nurses since 1885.
Right.
And,
seems logical.
Yeah, seems logical. So I'm hoping that we can recover some of that history somewhere along the way.
Yes. Well, let me ask you, do you have any advice for young people who might be inclined to look at a state hospital or a behavioral health hospital? What advice would you offer them? So
what I used to go to every new employee orientation the first day of NEO, and we would the executive team would greet our NEO people. And my advice to them, and it's still the same, is it's not hard to be a good employee at Terrell State Hospital. It's not hard to work at our state hospitals. Right. The work we do is hard, but all you have to do is show up with a good attitude and a smile on your face, and you treat our patients with kindness, dignity, and respect, and they will be good to you in return. I'm going to ask you a really hard question. Of course. If you had the opportunity, would you do it all over again? I absolutely would do it over again. I would absolutely do it over again. I've thought about, if I had come here straight out of high school, it started at 18 versus 21. 21's pretty young. Sure. But I think I needed to go get some real life experience, fail a little bit, drop out of college to really appreciate some of the things that Terrell State Hospital had to offer me. So absolutely, I would do it again. I would, even though leaving the forensic unit was the hardest thing that I ever did when I left in 2015, because I love taking care of patients. I love that interactions, those daily interactions that I used to have, that team that I was part of. I loved taking care of patients, but I needed to be able to help Terrell become what it is today. I had to go to quality management, and then I had to become the chief nurse executive, and then even leaving, going to central office was hard. I anguished over that decision on leaving Terrell State Hospital, but to be able to get my broader vision and ideas and desires and the care that we provide more global, I had to branch out and go out to central office as well. Right. So I would do it again, and I would even though I miss taking care of patients, I would still go to QM and be the QM director, and then I would still go be the chief nurse executive, and I'd still go to central office to be chief of nursing. You'd still follow the plan? I'd still follow the plan. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add that we haven't discussed?
I don't think so. I think that's a pretty good. I think that's a pretty good history of my time at Terrell State Hospital. There's been a lot of change that I've seen, and change is still coming. You know, that I think the thing that we can do is just embrace the change.
Yes.
And you know, there's so much of the brain that we do not know, and of course, most of everything for mental illness comes from the brain.
Right.
So. We're still learning about, you know, psychiatric conditions and the new medications that are coming out and all of those things. So I'm excited that Texas is finally devoting more care or more money to mental health care.
Yes.
Because the new facilities that we are building are amazing. I don't know if you've toured our facilities, but there's usually 4 patients in a room. It's dorm-like showers and restrooms.
Right.
But our new facilities are built based on the person-centered recovery model,
Yes.
where they have individual rooms, private bathrooms. There are lots of rooms devoted for classes and activities and therapies, which is so very important. So I'm super excited to be part of the forward movement of
Yes.
that person-centered care, and we're actually building buildings that are going to promote that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to doing.
I appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this. Thank
you.
you.